the very concept of the institution of higher learning is about to be broken.
The gym teacher, you have no idea what he's capable of.
Enough is enough. It's time for a collected activity of all of us who are engaged in resistance in some form or other to learn how to collaborate together, to end our isolation, to end our particulars, and to become part of that universal movement that says
the revolution will be broadcast.
Intellectuals are not a cherished aristocracy within society. They are sort of isolated within their own ivory tower.
Now I realize that you must stick close together because you share a common goddamn backbone, but I want to see some movement.
You have to have a movement, please.
You are now about to witness the strength of street knowledge.
The fundamental movement.
Welcome to the Fundamental Movement. This is a new podcast in physical education. Today, my name's Dean Dudley, but today with me, I've got my friends Aaron Beatley, Joey Fife, Andy Vasily, and Nathan Horn. We're going to just a little bit of a heads up. This is a no holds barred discussion on all things physical education. This will be an area of no backslapping, no Twitter worship. It will be discussing the issues of the day from our range of perspectives. So just briefly, we're going to introduce each of the panel members and they're going to give a little bit of background. If someone gets too long-winded and starts blowing their own trumpet, they're going to get jumped on all over by the other members of the panel. So before I'll throw myself on the chopping block first, just quickly, my name's Dean Dudley. And
2 minutes on the clock, Dean.
Yeah, I can see that. I've entered physical education in sort of a roundabout way. I was a soldier and never had any dreams of being a physical educator. Get that thing off the screen. Never had any dreams of being a physical educator because PE was done by the dumb kids at my school and never saw any value in it beyond what they forced us to do. But when I got out of the army, due to a severe injury, I went to university to study health, and I could major in human movement. And the only reason I did it is because it had the best looking girls in the cohort in education and PE. So I must admit, my motivations and the way I fell into physical.
to get rid of those stereotypes, Dean.
Yeah, but I suppose it's come a long way, becoming a teacher, and then obviously moving into research and teacher education as I hopefully matured. But I sort of fell into this profession by accident, and it's something obviously I love. So I might throw it over to Joey. I think you're the youngest member of our panel, Joey, aren't you? You're recently you're no longer a teenager, right?
No, just hit puberty last week. So we're good to go. My name is Joey Fife. I'm a physical education teacher here in Montreal, Canada. This is my 6th year teaching. I teach grades 1, 2, 3, and 6 Phys-Ed. When I'm not teaching, I do work on my website, the iPhys-Ed.com, which is an online resource for physical education teachers, which has allowed me to connect with such smart people as everybody else on this podcast. I'm really looking forward to this.
No backslapping.
By smart people, I mean kind of annoying, and we'll see how this goes. I'm just glad to be here, guys, and I'm going to shoot it over to Andy.
Okay, everybody, I'm Andy Vasily. I'm currently in Nanjing, China. I've been connected with 3 out of the 4 here for the last couple of years. Aaron and I just connected recently back in November. I'm kind of in between jobs. I'm doing some consulting. I finished teaching in June to kind of pursue my consulting. And then everything kind of changed when I was offered a job in Saudi. So now I'm moving over to a position in Saudi, which will have me work with teachers on a continual basis within the school. So I'm looking forward to just kind of sharing thoughts and views related to the subject area of physical education. I've been a physical educator for the last probably 18 years. I still think
you weren't always a physical educator, though, were you, Andy? You didn't just wake up, finish high school, and go, I'm going to be a PE teacher.
No, I had a little bit of a journey there. I was in Japan. I was a child youth counselor in Canada. Went to Japan, And then my first job in physical education was actually, I didn't apply for a physical education position. I was offered it and I jumped at the chance, and I've been doing it since. So that's my story and background. So how about you, Nathan?
Yeah, hi, I'm Nathan Horn. Currently based in Singapore, an elementary school physical education teacher. Guess my background is I was always that kid in your class that just couldn't handle it when they lost. I was a very, very competitive child, always wanted to win, but I wasn't always the most skilled child. So it was this sort of interesting thing.
By the way, everyone, he's a Tasmanian.
Yeah, so I was born with two heads, so obviously had the second one removed at a young age. But no, yeah, just loved sport, but wasn't necessarily the best at it. Couldn't handle it when I lost. Was that sort of kid in your PE class that's always blowing his top. So the idea that I would now become a PE teacher, I guess, is a really interesting one. I didn't really want to do PE when I was at university. I was looking at sort of other areas, and then just sort of fell into it and loved it. And probably, if I'm honest with myself, was a pretty shitty PE teacher for the first few years of my career. And then sort of all of a sudden the light bulb hit and was like, you know what, like I can be doing better at this. And probably through connecting with some of these guys and some of the people that are hopefully listening, I think hopefully I'm on the right track now, and I'm sort of doing some good things. So we'll see how this conversation goes. I think there's one person left.
We've only known Nathan for 2 weeks. He only stopped being shitty.
Well, the thing is, the other thing I was going to say
I'm surprised I'm surprised Nathan got the chair high enough so he could actually look into the camera.
Yeah.
Right?
Standing on a box. Although I was going to say that I've actually met in person 4 of the 5 people here. I haven't met Dean, so I'm not sure he actually exists.
All right. My name's Aaron Beatley. I'm at the University of Kentucky in Lexington, Kentucky, and that's not where the horses are. That's where the horses are, but not where the Derby is. Lexington's a much smaller place. I really had no intentions of going to college after high school, and my dad just signed me up and said, "You're going to college." So I went, and I took the 6-year route, which my students tell me that means I was a super, super senior. And then I decided that I didn't want to grow up, so I went on and got my master's degree and doctorate and taught in Dallas, and now I'm back in Kentucky and enjoy doing the kinds of things I'm doing and working with these whack jobs that I'm on this show with, and I look forward to this conversation.
Awesome. So we just a bit of perspective. So when we go around the panel, we've got Nathan and Joey, who are currently teaching in schools. You've got Aaron and myself, who are teaching and researching in universities, and we've got Andy, who's unemployed. Right? No, so
he's between jobs.
Yeah, exactly. I'm a pedagogical coach.
Waving.
So we're just gonna kick this off with just a really open out there question about what we think physical education is and what we think physical education means. I mean, we've been sitting in on Twitter conversations. We have these conversations with our students, and if we look at it, it is just such a diverse and segregated and competed space about what this subject does, who it serves, and what it seeks to achieve. So I thought we might start off. I'll just ask the question. I'm going to go around to each of the panel members, and you've got to do this in 30 seconds, right? 30 seconds. What is physical education, right? And you can't use words that have more than 4 syllables.
Yeah, you give that assignment. I'm Steve.
Right? And it's got to be, you got to give the response as you would give to a layperson. So not imagine that Joe Blogs down the pub, you're trying to explain to him what it is you teach. He knows you're a teacher. So I don't want to hear words like pedagogy or cognitive or any of that stuff in your response. You've got to use, so you're a physical education teacher. What is it you teach? And I'm going to start with Andy. Go. 30 seconds.
Okay. I guess I'm teaching the I guess getting young people to embrace being active for life, and getting them to really pursue and explore and find an area of movement that resonates with them. Lots of times, resonate, 3 syllable. I guess providing them with as many opportunities as possible to explore movement and to find out what it is they love doing and to offer them as much support as I can.
Nathan, you're still going.
Within
Nathan, go. Done. Nathan, 30 seconds.
For me, physical education for me is just giving kids the opportunity to move and allowing them to have fun, to learn about their body, and to hopefully build some skills and some understanding about how it is that they might continue to move as they grow into adults.
Joey,
done.
Shoot.
Phys-Ed for me is just making sure that I'm helping kids develop the skills, the understandings, the knowledge they need to be healthy and active throughout their lifetime. And what's important to me is that when you're teaching, it's not just thinking about like what they're going to look like at the end of the day, but really keeping in mind what the kid's going to look like when they're like 20, 30, 40, 50, 80 years old. So making sure that they have everything they need to go so they can be happy and active throughout their lifetime, but also really value physical activity and realize like all the important life lessons they can learn through participation in physical activity. Done.
It's a place where kids learn to love to be physically active, and what that means for each individual kid may be different. Some it might be that they learn skills. Some may be exposed to something they've never been exposed to. Some may change that throughout their time in elementary or middle school and high school, but it's in general a place where kids learn to love physical activity. Dean.
Awesome. So this, you want me to do something? I basically think physical education is about 3 things. It's about inclusion where there might not ordinarily be any in the wider society. It's about promoting health and health outcomes, and it's about getting people to engage in their civic duty and the societies in which they live in. So those 3 things.
Hey, Dean, I just want to say
everything else. Everything else is.
Oh, sorry.
Go.
I thought you were done there. Go.
No, go. No, I just said everything else is coloured bubbles. But yeah, if you're not including, if you're not having all kids included, if you're not making them think seriously about their health and do something about it and engage in civic society, then yeah, everything else is coloured bubbles. But what was your question, Joey? Shoot.
No, it wasn't a question. It's just a comment too. You were saying like, what do we teach and everything? Like first and foremost, we teach kids. And Nathan and Andy, you got to meet Larry at Larry McDonald out in North Carolina. And he always says that. It's like, what do you teach? Well, you teach kids. You don't teach phys-ed. And I think it's important to remember that like as phys-ed teachers, when we're teaching, you know, yes, we have our curriculum, we have these things that we're teaching, but we're role models and we're modeling and we're trying to get kids to see the benefits of being active and healthy and enjoying health throughout your lifetime just by how you are as a teacher. I just wanted to put that out there because I always forget to mention that, and it bugs me that I forget to mention that afterwards.
I think I think it's really hard to get used to saying it, because I agree with you, Joey, that it's really hard to get used to saying when somebody says, what do you teach? First thing people say is I teach physical education. And it'd be nice to get that process changed where everyone says, what do you teach? And they say, I teach students, because, I teach students about physical education or I teach students about whatever. But I think it's a good point, and what we have to, again, keep our eyes on. I tweeted this out a few weeks ago, that it's just about relationships, and whatever we want to teach, it's not going to happen unless we have those relationships with kids.
Yeah,
it's funny, man. It's funny about. It's really good that you mentioned that. You mentioned the thing about being a role model and everything. I'm going to give you a bit of an anecdote here. I remember I said in my intro that physical education didn't really interest me when I was in high school for a couple of reasons. One is it was just going out and playing stuff, or throwing a javelin or playing football or something. And I remember my PE teachers. One used to wear really short shorts, and I even remember one class he didn't wear underwear, and it sort of exposed himself to the front of the class. And I just thought this guy was a peanut. And then I had a
fashion tips from PE too, honey.
Yeah, short shorts all the way. I just remember being, one, emotionally scarred, but two is I didn't see this guy as being particularly bright or role modeling the sort of person I wanted to be. I also had another physical education teacher in sort of early high school who, she looked like an army drill instructor, but not a fit one, right? So she was, and you talk about teachers being role models, and I just remember her yelling at us for 60 minutes to run around or to do something, and she'd literally stand on the hill with her hands on her hips and a whistle in her mouth and yell and scream. And I suppose by the time I got into senior high school and physical education became an elective subject, I looked at the kids that were picking it, and they weren't the brightest. Actually, they were quite the opposite. They were sort of the dregs of, or if I can use that word, they were the kids that were just struggling to stay in school. And I didn't see anything in which they were teaching us that was going to allow me to be a better person. Right? I didn't see the relevance in playing the sport and the games as much as I enjoyed doing that on my own. I enjoyed playing football for school. I enjoyed playing football out of school. But in the physical education context, it just seemed, jump in. I just found it detached. So you say it's about teaching kids. Well, fine.
Dean, I just want to say one thing. Now, you have those views now in retrospect, reflecting back. Like at the time, did you actually feel disengaged, or did you feel you weren't getting anything out of it? Or knowing what you know now, reflecting back on you as a student?
It got me out of English. The subjects I loved at school was science and maths and economics. They were the things that really turned on my brain. But the physical education was, hey, I'm going to, if I can get out of English today and not have to read Shakespeare, then that's a good thing, right?
So looking back, Dean, you don't think, I think I know the answer to this, you don't think what you learned, and looking back now, at the time you thought it was awful, but when you look back at it now, it was awful.
Oh, absolutely. It was terrible. Right? It was.
And therein lies, I think, part of our issue in the field in general is this perception of, I don't know where I was speaking recently, and if you sit on an airplane and you ask the person next to you, what is physical education to you? Rarely do they start off with anything positive. I mean, it's just, and their answer is always something different, which speaks to the fact that we do not have a common brand. People don't know what physical education is. Part of it is because we constantly change our name. We start off as, we're kinesiologists, or we're, perceptual motor skill teachers, or we're fitness instructors, or we're fitness educators. And they really don't know what we are. And if they did experience physical education, it might not have been positive. So it's one of these things that everybody asks, when I gripe about this, everybody says, well, how do you fix that? I think you fix your corner first and then start to launch out. But do you agree? I mean, again, you guys are in different places than I am, that's probably one of our bigger issues is what we don't have anything to market.
Yeah, no, totally. I was just going to say, like, I'm not a phys ed teacher today because I had an amazing phys ed teacher at any point in my life. If anything, I had a lot of very mediocre phys ed teachers that as a child, I knew were jokes. Like, I knew they were straight up jokes as educators. Like, I remember being in high school and being taught, we had aquatics class, and I remember that our phys ed teacher couldn't swim and had no idea what they were saying. And I specifically remember the day that somebody pushed him in the water and the lifeguard had to pull him out of the water. And I was like, what the hell is this class? Like, what is this joke of a class that we're in right now? This is ridiculous. And I loved being active. Like, I loved participating in sport. I loved being active on the weekends with my family and everything. And the reason I became a phys ed teacher wasn't because I had good phys ed teacher models, because I had good teachers in my life that was like, yeah, this seems like a sweet gig. Like, I like the idea of like working with young people, helping inspire them. But at no point did I have like this role model that was like, wow, phys ed seems really important. It seems really great. I kind of developed that over time when I was, when I'd get pissed off at the fact that, yeah, like when I tell people like I'm a phys ed teacher, people think it's a joke. Or when I told my parents I was going into physical education as opposed to going into kinesiology, which is way more scientific, my parents stopped talking to me for like 6 months. So like there's nothing in my life that really pushed me into phys ed except for the fact that I knew I wanted to teach kids and I knew that I valued physical activity. There was nothing there to really like promote, like you were saying, Aaron, like the brand of physical education.
So is there even one person on this panel that can say they ended up, and we're all at various stages of our career, is there any one person on this panel that says, I had an amazing physical education teacher and that's the reason I got into physical education?
No.
that was my point that I was going to make a second ago. Was like, yeah, as I'm listening, same for me. Like same story as Joey, same story as what we're hearing. And I think that outside of this panel, if you took a straw poll of physical educators, a lot of them would have the same story. My question though was, to anyone on this panel, if you didn't have a physical educator who was a role model for you, was there somebody in your life or in your experience along your career as a child or into adulthood that did make you see like what was possible for you as a physical educator or for you as an educator? Because like I think for me, like I also had some really like poor physical education teachers, and it was then when I experienced maybe another teacher or a family member who was also in education that I saw like, oh wow, like actually there's a lot more to this than just what I'm experiencing here. Because yeah, I was the same. I love to just get out and play. Yeah, well, there could be more. So I don't know, questions out there. I mean, was there somebody in any of your sort of past that made you sort of see that there could be more?
Good question. To me, I didn't have a role model in terms of a physical education teacher, but for me, it was my grade 10 history teacher. And that history teacher, I noticed the first thing that history teacher did, and I'm still friends with him to this day, he must be 76 years old now, is the idea that he...
Oh, you would have gone to school together, right, Andy? You two would have been at school together at the same time.
Close.
They were best mates. He was his best man at Eddie's wedding.
He actually, funny story, I hadn't seen him or talked to him in 10 years. And then I was told by another friend of mine that he drove 2 hours through a snowstorm to go to my father's funeral. He found out my father passed away. And he ended up at the wrong funeral, had stayed at the whole funeral, realized halfway through, and decided, oh, this is a nice funeral. I'll just stay at this one. And I found that out, and I called him up. I called him up and reconnected with him. But I think that the point is that it was obviously relationships first that mattered. And when I began teaching, I always remembered him and always remembered the value of connecting with the students. And that's what he did. And that's what made me want to learn in his class. So that's why I go back to the idea of motivation and mindset and setting up learning environments that allow kids to take risk and take chance. And from what I observe and from what I've seen when I visit other schools, I oftentimes don't see those environments. I see very much a different type of an environment that's very skill and sport focused, and you see disengagement right away. So getting back to our original question about what PE is, I think it is very important to have these discussions.
So really the thing is, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, the general consensus around the table is that everyone needs to be a teacher first, a great teacher, and physical education is the context in which we explore and unpack those relationships. That really resonates. I suppose that resonates with me. My family tree had two professions on the male side: digging coal out of the ground and fighting wars, right? And digging coal out of the ground wasn't exciting for me, so I went the other route. And the teacher I connected with at school was my mathematics teacher, who was a commando in the British Army. And he, I went to maths class not because I loved quadratic equations, although I don't mind statistics now, but just the conversations I had with him. And when I had this great relationship with him as a teacher, I went off and did my officer training in the Army. And when we actually used to get attached to high school Army cadet units, a bit like ROTC in the States, Aaron. So I went to your version of West Point here in Australia. And I'd work with these kids. Yeah, I couldn't have worn that uniform. That grey uniform in the snow would have done me in. But working with these kids who were involved in this extracurricular activity, it had nothing to do with physical education. It had lots to do with living in the outdoors, working in the environment, being active, working as a team. These were values that I found that I took with myself into the Army. And then when I had my accident and I went back to university, apart from chasing girls, it was I found a real love.
Apart from chasing girls,
don't make
just casually drop that one.
I actually found a real. I'll tell you what, it was activity. All right. It was hard work. I found a real love. I actually found a real love for exploring big ideas that weren't limited to a textbook. I mean, I loved history and I loved economics. I loved science, but I always found that when I worked with it, even my mathematics teacher found it really hard to make learning relevant outside what was going on the whiteboard. Physical education always seemed to make that link. Did anyone else have that experience? That it's a uniquely rich way in which to connect with kids that maybe isn't afforded in other subject areas. I don't know.
I didn't have that experience, but I see that now. But
chasing girls, I understand
but,
that you had that experience.
now I see the relevance in that, but at the time I did not see the relevance in that there were greater connections to society and to ourselves and to others through physical education, but I definitely see that now.
Well, I think like I hear what you're saying, Dean, and like if it comes down to like, to me it's something really simple. Like if you're like physical education, often we're in this like dynamic environment, whether we're outside or we're in a large space inside. There's a lot more space for movement and space for kids to be able to interact with other kids and the environment around them. And it sort of breaks my heart a little bit because like often you have this stereotype of a classroom where kids are sitting in a desk and they're sort of chained to their desk and you have to do work. And that's the way that a teacher can control an environment within which kids are. So here we are in PE with this more dynamic environment where kids can move and interact with multiple people in different ways. And it just breaks my heart when I see kids standing around in lines, waiting their turn. Like, to me, that's the same as having a kid just sit in their desk by themselves and be chained to a worksheet. So I think like as physical educators, we're in this really lucky position where we have like it's been gifted to us on a silver plate. Like here's this environment in which you can work where anything's possible, but to then limit kids to be able to, well, no, you have to do it in this way so that it's easier for me as a teacher to manage. I think it really grinds my gears.
And that's only 15 likes in one paragraph. So congratulations, Nathan. I think that's a record for you.
Thanks, mate.
I like your analogy. And I think it's one of these that we have. It's such a unique opportunity. I guess we're the only ones, really. I mean, I guess you could say maybe music and art, but to get to impact them in this environment where they're not sitting at a desk. And you know, they come to us and they love activity, and our job is, especially early on, is to maintain that love and hopefully at the elementary level hand it off to a middle school, junior high person that can hand it off to a high school that hands it off to the rest of their lives. But with that environment we have, it becomes they come to us loving activity, and we have to make sure they still love activity. And I think sometimes we've successfully worked that out of them, that they leave us and maybe they don't like exactly.
That's a really interesting point. We've all come from backgrounds where we enjoyed activity in our youth, but not one of us has said it was the physical education teacher that maintained that interest through childhood into adulthood and beyond. Yet that's the question we keep, all of us, when we started, why did we get into physical education? We all said something about lifelong learning, lifelong participation. How realistically, no bullshit, how accountable are we for that equation? I mean, Aaron, you and I deal with this stuff every day with health agencies, and I think by circumstance it gets pushed down. We push it down into schools with our research and our agendas. How responsible can or are our people, our physical education teachers, and our area responsible for this lifelong pursuit of physical activity?
I'll go. I mean, I think it's kind of, I guess what you're kind of akin to the whole, you know, so many times in PE, we jump on childhood obesity, we need more PE. And, you know, I don't know that that's where we want to be held accountable for it, because they can come to us and be active and eat bark and berries all day long, and they go home and eat ding dongs and Doritos and sit around, and we're going to have an obesity issue. So to put all that onto this.
Can you just clarify what a ding dong is? Because that's going to get lost in translation in Australia, I guarantee.
Like a cupcake.
All right.
It's a chocolate Twinkie. Yeah. It's all
a
processed.
small
It's great. Lots of corn syrup in it too.
America.
Eating ding dongs just sounds totally wrong.
Oh, okay. Well, then Twinkies. How about that? Twinkies.
Yeah.
Twinkies
okay. Some sort of cake.
It just goes well with
confectionery,
Doritos.
right?
Do you know what Doritos are? Yeah, corn. Yeah, ding dongs and Doritos.
Corn
Just,
chips.
when you say it. But I think that's where we just have to be careful of what we're going to be held accountable for, and do we play a role in that? Yes, but to what extent do we want to be held accountable when you have them? You know, what percentage of their lives do you have them to be held accountable for something is somewhat difficult.
And that also gets me going though. The whole childhood obesity thing, and like I'm just gonna put this out there, okay? Because you hear so many teachers being like, "Oh, we need more phys-ed time. We need more phys-ed time. We're fighting childhood obesity over here." And then meanwhile, you're like, "Okay, what are you doing in your program?" And they're not doing shit. Like they don't even have a program. So like you're arguing is like, "Oh, I need more phys-ed time." It's like, what are you actually doing with the time that you're given? And how are you trying to see if it's even effective in bringing on lifestyle changes when you're students? That just gets me going all the time because I would love more phys-ed time, because I know that like the way that I design my curriculum and everything, I could make use of that time. But I feel like a lot of people are like, "Oh, more phys-ed time because I want to justify my job." But just be good at your job to start off with. That's the starting point there in that conversation.
Absolutely. And when you use that as your crutch that you want to, we need more PE because of childhood obesity. No, we need more PE for a lot of other reasons. I mean, that might be one of the byproducts eventually, but we need PE for a lot of other things other than because you can put all the kinds of money into it. And I've been in programs and seen programs that have daily physical education, and guess what? They have chubby kids, lots of them. And so we have to go back to, and I think I've heard you say this in presentations before, Joey, that we have to be physical education because we're physical education, not for some other reason that may or may not have something that we can impact.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit like arguing that, we need to drive up book sales, so we need more English, right? That's a good point. The argument is terrible. So I'm just looking at the time, and I'm conscious of this, and I'd like everyone to go around and give a bit of a closing statement, but in future podcasts, we might explore specific issues of physical education in more detail and bring out some research. I think what you're saying, Joey, is really interesting around time. I can have a look at a bit of research in this. There's actually some good thresholds. I mean, more time doesn't mean better or quality PE, right? And things like lesson length actually have, they have a lot of teachers here argue, if I had longer lessons, I'd be fine. Well, actually, you wouldn't be. Your best teaching happens at about the 55 minute, up to about 55 minutes. After that, it starts to dissipate and turn a bit ordinary and a little bit more disorganized. If we're talking about why physical education exists, it's the same question. You can't have it because of obesity. It's why physical education exists the same reason that mathematics and English and creative arts and all those other subjects exist, to provide broad, diverse, rich learning experiences to students. I think we need to get this sort of chip off our shoulder that we're going to, save the planet and save the world through what we do alone. And we have to see ourselves. And I go back to the initial context. Everyone sees themselves as a teacher first. What does quality teaching and education look like? Because we know that makes a massive difference in terms of disease, communicable and non-communicable disease, and it makes a massive difference in terms of every societal outcome we look at. Our context, and I think we can do this in future podcasts, is explore how the context of physical education contributes to great teaching and great learning and great education. So I just want to go around just quickly to finish off, because I don't want people to get too bored, and I've nearly finished my glass of scotch here. Don't tell everyone it's 9:30 in the morning.
The bottle, isn't it?
So maybe just very quickly concluding statements. If we go back to, I tell you what, 2 sentences. If we were talking about what quality physical education is, right? We might go and do this in the next podcast. We said what physical education is. What's quality physical education in 2 sentences? Nathan, go.
Deep breath.
No likes. You can't use the word. He can't use the word like at all. Go.
Relationships. Okay. Let's see if I can manage this. Relationships, authentic, purposeful, standards-based. It's got to be accountable, and it's got to be kids moving. Done.
Love of movement. Geez, that's a tough one. I mean, we're just repeating the same thing. So I just want to throw it out there to teachers listening. What is your definition of quality physical education? And begin to really think about that. So I think just leaving people with that question is more important to me.
So maybe, sorry to drop in that then maybe that's what we leave open for our next podcast, is we're going to explore, we've all said that physical education has some similar things embedded in it, but in future podcasts, we're going to explore what it means in terms of quality. Everyone happy with that? Mate,
so you just let me put my ideas out there, and now none of you are going to say anything, so I'm just going to look like a fool.
Nathan, congratulations. Any other closing comments?
We can edit it.
All right. If not, thank everyone for listening to the Fundamental Movement. We hope you listen to us as regularly as we can get it to happen. Hope no one develops a drinking habit by participating in this podcast. We hope to have different guests over the coming time. But thanks again for your participation. Thanks again to Joey, Aaron, Nathan, and the old man with the beard on the end, Andy Vasily. Thanks for your time.
I thought you were talking about Aaron.
Hard to say you're not already famous. There you go. You're taking medicine even though I see the man